If none of this changes your mind, that's okay. I'm searching for truth, and it's okay if we end up at different conclusions. I also acknowledge that you don't care about my salvation anymore, and so I'd be surprised if you even made it to this video. But I don't think that I'm suppressing my belief or a belief in God. If anything, I wish that I could believe. Christianity offers me companionship, purpose, and community. It's hard to make friends, and it's hard to accept that you're alone in the world. Christianity would solve a lot of my problems, but wanting something to be true doesn't make it true. True things are also capable of withstanding intense scrutiny and any hypothesis against it. In summary, I struggle to believe in Christianity, at least the version that your church subscribes to, for a variety of reasons. Most importantly, the Bible is not inerrant or infallible, which Pastor Ed himself has acknowledged. A perfect God leaving behind an only 99% or less true message is difficult to accept for me. Christians will claim that the core doctrine is unchanging, but I still struggle with the idea that a perfect, all-powerful God leaving behind an imperfect message to his creation. It's not just a single number. There's entire sentences and stories added or removed, even some with profoundly important meaning, such as whether or not God preserves his word for his creation, and also whether or not God's holy text can be trusted and how much of it can be trusted. This fact alone puts everything else I'm about to discuss onto a shaky foundation. The word is only 99% true or less. You saw how many variations there were in just a small section of the Bible in the first video. So, can we even presuppose the Bible is the absolute truth anymore? Even if we had the original manuscripts, in my opinion, we still don't need to presuppose anything is true. Let's move back in time to 1800, where before the theory of evolution even existed. Now I don't presuppose anything is true. Why can't we begin with doubt? We have a variety of theories about what happens when we die. Most likely, only one or none is true. Christianity, Islam, Mormonism, nothing, etc. If only one is true, then shouldn't we doubt all of them? And the one that prevails and withstands all the scrutiny is the one to be believed? But now consider the Bible is only 99% true. We really can't presuppose it's the absolute truth anymore. We don't have access to the absolute truth. Pastor Ed claims that faith should be reasonable and that an all-powerful God will provide evidence to the claims of the Bible. He also claims evidence should be quality. So I'm looking for quality evidence that supports the Bible's truth. Instead, I find evidence that is open for interpretation and has multiple possibilities. We also find several negative pieces of evidence that suggest the Bible is untrue. Take a look at Noah's Ark, for example. The Epic of Gilgamesh has a flood story very similar to the Bible, and it's 1,000 years older than Genesis. This is a smoking gun evidence that Genesis is not the original. Combine that with zero archaeological evidence of a global flood and zero evidence of Noah's Ark on Mount Ararat and the laws of nature that refute the possibility of the Ark, such as genetic diversity being too small to repopulate, carnivorous animals, no way for animals to scatter across the earth, no evidence for them to have done that. And instead of providing us evidence that the event happened despite it not being possible, which would indicate a miracle did happen and would cause me to believe, instead we have zero evidence that the event happened, suggesting that the story didn't happen or God did the event and hid the evidence. And why would God hide the evidence if he wants to? Well, he doesn't want to prove if he's real. So he either intentionally hid the evidence to deceive us, or I can't figure out why, a good reason why he would hide the evidence other than the possibility that Noah's Ark just didn't happen. So once again, the Bible is only 99% true or less. Maybe Noah's Ark is just a scribal mistake or an enhancement. Another piece of negative evidence is the tombs breaking open. This is a miraculous event that was witnessed by many people in Jerusalem, even people in power, such as the centurion witnessing people rising from their graves. The centurion also witnessed it in front of other people who also witnessed it. The Romans were great record keepers, so certainly this would have been recorded in history, but it wasn't, with the exception of scriptures and a source that references scriptures. The act of record keeping and a lack of record for this event suggests that it didn't happen and couldn't have happened. The appearances, depending on how much benefit of the doubt you give, all we need for the appearances of Jesus, of a resurrected Jesus, is 3 to 6 people to hallucinate that they saw Jesus rise from the dead. Peter, Paul, James, maybe Mary, and then maybe Matthew and Mark if you consider them authors, which is open for debate. A couple of hallucinations of seeing Jesus and the religion could take off. There are too many variables that we're giving benefit of the doubt to. Peter was illiterate, yet claims to have written Peter. Relying on friends to be honest with each other and to rebuke each other over lies when disagreements and lies were running rampant is not solid evidence. The authors and scribes could have easily written this stuff into the stories. No mass hallucinations are required. Arguments and persecution between faiths was also common, even internally within the Christian religion. So, arguments were happening. As far as the martyrdom and the fact that the disciples wouldn't have died for something that they knew was a lie, well, the reality is that the conflicting martyrdom accounts throw into question the integrity and honesty of the entire church. Why are there conflicting accounts? Somebody or multiple people were making things up. Christians and Josephus at the time, or someone tampered with a secular historian's writing. It could have been Christians trying to make their religion more convincing. Could have been non-Christians trying to make Christians look deceptive. But the reality is there's multiple conflicting accounts of martyrdom, and it's not strong evidence for the apostles' willingness to die for their faith. And even so, it would only prove that they believed that Jesus rose from the dead, not that he actually did. So this is definitely not evidence that points to an all-powerful being. And this isn't quality evidence either, because you can't have quality evidence when there are 6 different people saying 6 different things about how a single person died. The Red Sea is only evidence that it could have parted if it was some other body of water. We don't know where this other body of water would have been, and if a miracle did happen, God left no evidence for it. There's also mistranslation, so we don't know if it's the Red Sea or the Sea of Reeds. As far as miracles go, they can't be proven either. Lazarus supposedly raising from the dead conveniently happened right before a war that destroyed the entire city, and the texts weren't written until close to a lifetime after the event that happened. Would have or could have happened. Miracle workers were common in Jesus' time, so his supposed miracles were not especially out of the ordinary. Even historical figures had a mix of mythical and realistic features. Jesus was likely a historical figure with a mix of mythology and reality attributed to him. More texts written about him because there was religion tied to him, unlike another mythical person like Alexander the Great, who had both mythical and realistic features associated with him. There's just too many ways that these miracles could have been explained naturally. And if God is all-powerful, he should easily be able to provide strong, conclusive evidence that could not be explained away via natural means. He's not done any of that with any of the miracles. Prophecies aren't very convincing either. Most are vague, can be interpreted after the fact, and the New Testament authors all had access to the Old Testament, which was written 400 years before the New Testament. You can draw parallels between nearly anything. An example, there's a tree in Genesis. Jesus was hung from wood made from a tree. That's a prophecy fulfilled. Even the stronger ones, like in Daniel, have 4 different time frames to start from. So it's really difficult to say that prophecies are strong evidence. And then Paul's conversion. Paul may not have even been persecuting the church as harshly as is claimed. There's no evidence for it, and even if he was, Muslims have seen Mary, and there have been miraculous turnarounds from people who were critical opponents to, some religion. So critical opponents have had visions and have converted. Paul simply needed to hallucinate that he saw Jesus and believed it, and then that would have been more than enough to make him convert. The empty tomb, even highly respected theologians acknowledge that the evidence for the empty tomb is not strong enough to claim that with confidence that Jesus rose from the dead. You can see Dale Allison's The Resurrection of Jesus book, or the video that talks about this. And then as far as Christian persecution, Christianity wasn't even persecuted empire-wide until 303 CE, giving it plenty of time to spread, and even then, the western regions didn't enforce the decrees nearly as strictly as the eastern regions. Persecution of empire-wide magnitude lasted 10 or so years, and again, over in the West, they just weren't enforced. There's a variety of reasons the church could have survived, such as people doing the rituals and going through the motions and then worshiping in private or hiding the texts. There's a lot of different ways that Christianity could have survived. And so I'm looking for a reason to believe. I still want to believe if this faith is true. But not a single piece of evidence forces someone to acknowledge that something supernatural happened. Every piece of evidence has multiple, reasonable, rational explanations that don't require the supernatural. The Bible's also proven itself to not be 100% true, but instead it's approximate, according to Pastor Ed. How can he be 100% confident in something approximate? How can he be 100% confident that God rose from the dead based on the reality that none of the evidence would pass in a modern courtroom? As Pastor Ed said, the evidence has to be quality. If God is all-powerful, all-knowing, and perfect, wouldn't it be easy for him to provide powerful evidence that cannot be refuted? Just as Pastor Ed said, there's no evidence that can convince you to believe in God, which is why we rely on faith. He also said if God is all-powerful, there will be evidence to the Bible's claims and that the evidence has to be quality. Instead, the only reason we have to believe is because some of us want to believe. So is God really all-powerful?